Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's session on Python programming. Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon, Sakshi.
Ma'am, I have given you the right to start.
Right. Thank you so much. I will be starting
Right.
soon.
Okay, ma'am.
Is my screen visible, Sakshi?
Yes, ma'am, visible.
Thank you. Yes. Let us start today's session on function. Okay. Let us discuss the definition of function first, and later on we will see how do we define a function in Python. Okay. What is function? Whenever I want to execute a group of statements to perform a particular task, specific task, that task may be very small or the task may be very large. Okay. But if any set of instructions or any set of statements that I'm going to perform for a particular task, then I will name that particular task based on the functionality. Okay. For example, if I need to multiply two numbers, then I will name that particular function as multiplication or mul. Similarly, if I need to sum the n number of all the elements of an array, then what I will do is I will simply give the name as sum. Okay, so the sum itself is indicating that we are going to add a few elements. Okay, right? So for that sake, whenever we do use name of the function, the name of the function always depends on the task that we are going to solve, right? So let us see the syntax. Here, function definition, I need to define the function first, and later on I will be using that particular function. Okay, how do I use a function? I will use the function based on my requirement. If I need to, if I want to add two numbers, then what I will do is I will define a function for adding two numbers, and later on, whenever I want to use that particular function, I will call that particular function, right? So that is nothing but use. Fine. So how do we call, or how do I define the function? In Python, we do define the function. We do start with a keyword called def. Okay. So here def itself is a keyword to define a particular function, right? Definition and later on I need to provide name of the function with which you want to define. Okay. And afterwards I will be providing the parameter list. Okay, so parameter list, not necessary that we need to give the parameter list. For few function we may not require the parameter list. That means it is not necessary to give the parameters inside the parameter list, right? And at the end I will end the function signature with colon. Okay, whenever I do write down the colon, you might have seen in other fields as well. For example, in looping, in conditional statements, we have used the colon. Whenever I use the colon and press enter, then automatically it takes the indentation. Okay, so inside that particular indentation, what I will be doing is I will be writing the group of statement, or else I do call it as a function body. Fine. So for what purpose this particular function has been defined, so that task I will be solving it based on some group of statements, right? Like this, this is nothing but the function definition, right? So function definition, function signature. In the function body, when I say group of statement, mostly we do write first statement in terms of docstring. Okay, let us try to understand what is docstring. Docstring is the first statement in the function body that exists. Okay, how do I define the function body? The function body can be defined based on either start with triple double quotes or triple single quotes. Okay, so whenever you define the string with triple quotes, triple double quotes or triple single quotes, then I say and I am placing that particular string in front of the as a first statement, then that statement becomes the doc string. Okay, the name itself is suggests that this string, this is the string. Okay, whatever I am representing inside those triple quotes, three triple quotes or three double quotes or three single quotes, whatever we are mentioning inside that particular quotes, that is a string. Okay, and for what purpose I need that particular string? Just to illustrate that what is the functionality of the function that I am going to define. So in brief, suppose I am writing a function named swap, swapping two numbers. So what I will be mentioning in docstring is, I will mention that this function is used to swap two numbers. Okay, suppose I am adding two numbers, then I will write inside these triple double quotes or triple single quotes. What I will write, I will simply mention that this function is to illustrate to add two numbers. Okay, suppose I'm writing a small function for concatenating two different strings. Okay, so what is the doc string that I will mention? I will mention the doc string as this particular function is to illustrate the concatenation of two different strings. Okay, so for what purpose? This is how I do represent the doc string. Okay, the doc string is mentioned in triple double quotes or triple single quotes, and that particular string should be placed as a first statement in the function body. Okay, this is how we do define the doc string. But why we need doc string? Doc string is required to give information to the to a user what the function is all about. Okay, what in brief, the function may be very large. Okay, maybe thousands of lines of code. So if user you want to give the information, brief information, what the function does in those 1,000 lines of code. So what you will be doing is, you will be writing in a line or two lines, in brief you will be explaining what the function do it. Okay, what is the scope of the function or what the function is all about. So for that sake, we call it as a doc string. Okay, document, doc is nothing but here nothing but document. Fine, we are providing the document string for the function that we are creating, right? So let us try to illustrate how do we define the function with an example, and also we will try how this particular doc string need to be written as a first statement. See here I am adding two numbers. Okay, so here what we have done, let me remove this first, these two statements. Okay, so initially what I have done, I have written a def keyword is written, and later on the name of the function. Here name of the function is add. Okay, and here is the parameter list. Here I've provided two parameters that I mean to say, whenever I call this particular function, I will be this particular function will accept two different values. Okay, so in the next statement, let me highlight this statement first. The highlighted statement is indicating that this is a docstring. Why I say this is a docstring? Because based on the definition, this statement is the first statement in the function body. Okay, here is the function body. These three statements are representing the function body of the add function, right? And this statement is represented as a first statement in the function body, right? Also, this particular statement, docstring, is placed inside these three double quotes over here. Okay, so for that sake, we say this the first statement of add function is representing the docstring. Fine. So here I'm giving the information to the user what this function is all about. Okay, in brief, I'm explaining what is this function is all about. Okay, what is this function? This function adds two numbers. Okay, in simple terms, I'm explaining to the user, I'm giving a hint to the user what this function does, right? So this no need to explain, it simply adds two numbers and the value is assigned to C. And later on, I'm simply printing the value of the C. So when you execute this particular function, okay, it will be this particular function will get executed. How do I call this function? I will be calling this particular function. I will use name of the function, that is add, and I will pass the values. Okay, I want to add these two numbers. So what I will be doing is I will call that particular function. So here what it will do is it will take, I have called this particular function as add function has already been defined. So it will, the execution, it will execute this particular add function. Okay, so it accepts two numbers, A and B, it has accepted, and it simply adds these two numbers and it will print the result. So the result got printed 60. Okay, let me tell you how what is the use of this particular docstring. Okay, so if someone wants to know, okay, after this particular definition, if someone wants to know what this add is about, okay, so what I will write is add question mark, then what if I execute this particular statement, so it gives the hint to the user what is this function signature. Function signature is name of the function and the required parameter list. And you can note here the docstring. The docstring is in illustrating that this function adds two different numbers. Okay, so whenever a user wants to know what this particular function is all about, so it is just like a help command. Okay, if I want help about this particular function, so I will write down the name of the function and question mark. So in detail, help will be provided on this particular function, right? Now, let us move to the next statement. What I've written in the next statement, if I don't want to get any kind of help, I just directly want to retrieve the document string that we have created for this particular add function. So that can be done with the name of the function, okay, and dot, and here is the syntax to extract the doc string. Okay, so doc and then underscore underscore two underscores followed by doc, and later on I will write down two underscore. So when I execute this, so here it gets printed, right? This function adds two different numbers will be printed. Suppose now the question here is, is it required that we need to provide or we need to give docstring always in all the functions? No, it is not required. Okay, so if I don't provide, so let me remove this. Okay, if I don't provide, then what happens? I have just executed the add function again without the docstring. Okay, so I said it is not required to provide the docstring for with respect to all the functions. It is just a hint to the user what the function is all about, right? So when I execute this here, because we have not provided docstring this time, so it will print as none. Okay, so for this sake I said it's not necessary that we always give the doc string, but it is always better to give the doc string. Okay, fine. So here how do we call the function? It's very easy. You all might be aware of how do we call the function. Give the name of the function and then required arguments need to be passed. That we have already done above, right? Name of the function, we have provided name of the function as add function, and then I will provide the required arguments, right? Okay, if we write the function, okay, whenever we do write a function, and if I provide, if I need to return, if this particular function, add function, instead of printing value of C, if I want to return the result of this add function, so what I will do is I will use the keyword return, and I will use which value I want to return. I will write down that. Just mention the keyword return space, and then you need to mention which value you want to return. That particular variable value I will be returning it, right? So whenever I let me execute this add function again, and whenever I want to call this particular add function, I will call name of the function and required arguments need to be passed. And when we pass the arguments, a function will and call the function will execute and it will return the value of C. So that value of C will be assigned to X. And when I print this X, so it has we have already got the result as 15, right? So these two numbers will be added and it will be returned. The value will be assigned to X, and in the next statement, I'm simply printing the value of X. So this function demonstrated that we can return a value from the function itself, right? And that particular value can be assigned and can be executed further, or that particular value can be used further in further statements, right? What if I want to return the multiple values? So in Python programming, we can return the multiple values as well. Okay, so how? Instead of writing return and variable value, I will take all those values that I want to return to a called function. So in that case, what I will be doing is I will write down return statement, okay, return and A, B, C. Instead of C, I want to return all three variable values, okay. So I am returning A, B and C, okay. So here add underscore ABC is called and I have passed 5 and 10, okay. And here when I write, because I'm returning three different variable values A, B, C. So what it will do is it will, whenever it returns, X will be assigned with value A, Y will be assigned with value B, and Z will be assigned with value C. Can see here, when we print the values of X, Y, and Z, 5, 10, 15 gets printed. Why it has got printed 5, 10, 15? Because when we called add underscore ABC, and when I A and B values 5 and 10 will be added, 15 will be saved inside C. So when I return it, A has value 5, B has value 10, and C has value 15. So those values, X will be assigned with value of A, Y will be assigned with value of B, and Z will be assigned with value of C. Okay. Again, this is to demonstrate a small function, square. Okay, so function to demonstrate square of number. So this particular, whenever we call a square function, so the number as well as its squared value will get printed. Number that we passed is 4, and it will print 4 and 16. Next statement is just to print the documentation docstring of this particular function. Okay, let us try to understand. If we call a function, okay, if we call a particular function and if we pass values, some data object is passed, right? So it depends on the type of the data that we are passing. Suppose if we are passing immutable data type, then what happens? You all know whenever we are passing immutable data type, and suppose the function is changing the values in between. So if it try to change the value in between, then what happens? A separate copy will get created, and it will work on, the function will work on that particular separate copy, right? And if we pass the mutable type object to a function, then if inside the function, if we are trying to modify or if we are trying to change the value, then what happens? That will be reflected to the same memory. Okay, that means outside the function as well as inside the function, both both the references will be referring to the same memory location in case of mutable objects. Whereas in case of immutable object, okay, they will be referring to different memory, right? So let us try to understand this concept with the help of an example. So what we have taken initially, try to understand this. Initially, what we have done, we have initialized one variable a equals to 10. That means you all know whenever I write down this statement, then 10 is a data object here. What type of data is this 10? 10 is a numeric data. Okay, in particular 10 is integer data, right? So this data object will get created first in a particular position. Fine. That means it will have 10 is a data object which will be assigned some memory, right? And A will be referring to that particular memory, right? And later on, when I call update of A, so whenever we call update of A, value of this data object will be passed, right? And what happens inside this particular function, inside this update, these three statement, in fact, this statement, and this statement. These three statements are what? These three statements are part of update function. That means these three are the function body, we are illustrating function body of this update. Okay. So in the first one, we have just simply mentioned that we are just trying to update the value of the variable. In the next statement, I am updating the value of the variable that we have received. Okay, I received a value as 10, but here a equals to 100. So whenever I do write this statement, what happens? Do remember, do try to recall the second or third session. We have discussed this. When I write a is equals to 1, and later on in the next statement itself, if when I write a equals to 10, so in this particular statement, a will be assigned in the above statement. One gets created at some memory location 1000, and this is assigned, and a will be pointing to this particular value. Okay, now when I reinitialize a equals to 10, then what happens? Again, some memory will be allocated for 10, Okay, this time it is not changed at the same position. It's not reflected in the same position. In rather separate position, separate memory is allocated in other memory location. Let's say this time 10 has allocated at 2000 and A will be referring to this. Okay, why it has not changed, why it has not changed the value of the variable from 1 to 10 here, uh, 1 to 10 in the same memory location, because integers are immutable objects. So we have seen the definition of immutable objects many times. Again, let me repeat once again. Immutable type is nothing but once we create any object, once the object gets created, then the identity and the object value will remain same, fine, throughout the lifetime. So whenever we try to reinitialize, then what happens? A separate copy will get created. One more data object will get created with a reinitialized value, and with reinitialized value, this data object will get created at this particular 2000 memory location, and now A will be referring to this particular 10. Okay. In a similar way, it happens in this particular function as well. Whenever we call this particular function, whenever I create A equals to 10, and when I pass update of A to this particular function, and inside this function, what I'm trying to do, I'm just trying to change the value of this particular variable A equals to 100. And when I try to print here, it will print value of A, that is 100, and you can check here 100, and its memory will be displayed. Okay, identity will be displayed. Whereas outside this particular function, okay, outside this particular function, what happens? Print A, ID of A. When I do this, it will not, because this A and this A has created in separate memory locations because of immutable property, right? So for that sake, in this particular print statement outside the function, whenever I try to print, it now prints, this time it prints as 10, and you can check the identity this time is different, correct? This is illustrating that whenever we are trying to update the value inside the function on the immutable type of data, then separate memory will get created. Fine. Let us see, whenever we try to do the same on mutable type data object, okay, what happens? Let us try to understand. Before this, let us note down this first. What we have done, we have taken one function, one list as LST, and we have initialized with three different data items. Okay, 2, 3, 4. 2, 3, 4 are initialized to LST. Okay, list is created, and later on I'm just printing the content of a list. Okay, and I just want to display the content of list, and later on what I'm trying to do, I'm trying to display the identity of that particular list. And afterwards I called the update function, and when I call the update function, I'm passing list. Okay, when I pass the list to this particular update function, what happens? Ignore the first statement, is just a Docstring, and in the next statement what we are doing, for we have taken the iterator. Okay, I just want to iterate over all the items of the list one after the other. Okay, so what I have done, I have taken a range, and inside this particular range, we need to give some number. Okay, if I give 10, then what happens? It will, the range of 10 will give me range of 10. What it will give us? It gives us the sequence of numbers from 0 to 9. Okay, so for that sake, to get that number, I'm computing the length of the list. Why I need to compute the length of the list here? Because I just want to iterate over the entire list. For that sake, I have done it. Okay, I'm just checking the, or you can say I'm just iterating over the entire list. So I'm checking how many elements are there in the list. So those many elements, suppose in this case 3. So range of 3, what it will return? It will return sequence from 0 to 2. Okay, and later on inside this for loop, what are we trying to do? We have taken list of I. That means in the first case, list of 0 is equals to list of 0. These two stars are indicating what? They are indicating the exponential. Okay, so whatever content of this is there, list is there. So it's simply what it will do is it will take to this particular value. Okay, list of 0 is 2 to the power of 2. Okay, in the next case 3 to the power of 2, and in the next case 4 to the, so it is doing the exponential, right? And afterwards, what are we trying to do? We are simply printing the content of the list and later on identity of the list. I just wanted to check. Okay, in the previous case, uh, outside the function and inside the function, we have seen the values have got changed as well as the identity. Okay, memory. Here I just wanted to check the list that we have created. Okay, I am printing the list and I'm checking the, I just want to get the memory of that particular list. And later on in the same list, instead of 2 3 4, I just want to compute 2 raised to 2, 3 raised to 2, and so on. And later on I just want to print the content of list and identity of the list. Let us execute it. You can see here why these two statements, I will let you know. Okay, this print statement is simply printed the initial values. Okay, that is 2 3 4. Initial values of the list are printed, and as well as its identity, right? And later on, when I call this particular function, again we have done 2 raised to 2, 3 raised to 2, and 4 raised to 2. And later on, what happens? Those values are reflected as 4 9 16 in the same memory, right? So instead of 2 it has changed 4, instead of 3 it has changed b, because we are changing, we ourselves are changing, doing that kind of modification. Okay, so and in why this particular third time we have printed, why this particular statement is all about, because this time we have modified the list and we have tried to print the content and its identity inside the update function, right? And after calling this particular function, we just wanted to make sure that whatever changes that this update function has done inside the function has been reflected on the original list. Okay, definitely it can be, we can cross check by using that memory location itself, but still I just wanted to print the content. Okay, so again I've printed the content of the list and later on printed the memory address as well. As you can see here, whatever changes that this particular update function has done on the list, okay, it has been reflected outside the function as well, right? Let us move to the next, that is default argument values. Okay, so what we mean by default arguments? Default arguments are those arguments where I want to keep for some of the variables. Okay, I want to keep the value as default throughout the function. Okay, so for that sake, suppose I have defined one function called sum function. I have defined, right? And I have initialized a equals to 1, b equals to 1, c is equals to 1. So all the values, all these values A, B, C, instead of providing simply the parameter list as A, B, C, I've provided some default values to this particular function. Okay, so and later on I'm just summing the values A plus B plus C. Let me execute this. And when I call this particular function sum function without passing any arguments, so whenever I call this particular default function, the function one, which I have used default arguments for all the parameters. Okay, so in this particular case, what happens? Because I have not passed any arguments, so what it will take, this particular sum function will consider A as 1, B as 1 and C as 1. Whenever whenever I do perform some statements on or computations on A, B, C, the values of A, B, C will be 1, 1, 1. Okay, so this time it returns A plus B plus C. Let me execute, and it should simply provide as output as 3. Okay, so let me compute this. Let me call this the same function, sum function. This time I'm calling with 2, 3 and 4. Okay, so earlier it called the sum function without passing any arguments. Correct. Hence, it has taken the one which we have provided while defining some function. We have provided some default values for all these three. Hence, if we don't provide any argument, it takes the default values. Okay. But this time I'm providing what? I'm providing 2, 3 and 4. When we provide 2, 3 and 4, then these values, default values, will be overridden by whatever values that we have passed. Okay, for example, 2 will be assigned to A, 3 will be assigned to B, and 4 will be assigned to C. And this particular function will give the result based on 2, 3 and 4. Right? Now, let us see an example where here the condition to provide default argument is you need to provide from the right to left side. Okay, that means if you want to provide default value to C and you don't want to provide default value to A and B. Okay, so this is fine, it will work fine, because we are giving the user, whoever calls this particular function, some function, we need to call with 2 compulsory arguments. Okay, the third one is optional. Why the third argument is optional? Because we have already allocated some, or we have already assigned some default values. Okay, so this particular function will work fine if I give this, or this particular function should also work. Let me execute and show you. So it has worked fine for all these three, right? Now it will work for this as well. Okay, this time what happens? 3A will be assigned with value 3 and B will be assigned with value 3, and whereas C will be as we have not passed the third argument, so what happens? Third parameter will be taken the default value, right? See here, 3 plus 3 plus 1. Now if I try to give this, if I try to call a sum function and I'm passing only one argument, this time what it will generate? It should generate an error. Okay, why it should generate the error? Let us see first why it should. Let me execute this. Okay, See here, it has generated the error. Let us see what type of error it is. It is type error. Okay. Some is missing one required positional arguments. That is B. Why it is saying again in particular to B? Because we do have some positional arguments, right? Positional arguments are nothing but while defining the function, if I'm providing the if we have provided more than one parameters, then those parameters will be positioned, right? So A is positioned first, B is positioned next, and C is positioned at the end. So whenever I am passing some values, for example 3, if I pass, so 3 will be assigned, A will be assigned with a value of 3. Okay, and similarly 4 will B will be assigned with a value of 4, C will be assigned with a value of 5, right? So based on those positions A, B, C, okay, these three values will be passed. A will not be assigned with value 5. Why it will not assign value of 5 or 4? Because A position of A is first, okay, first position, so first value will be assigned, value of 3 will be assigned. Position of B is second, it is in the second position, so second argument value will be assigned to that. Similarly, position of C is 3, right? So third value will be assigned to C, right? So in this case, it was generating the error when I try to call a function, some function, where for one particular argument, I have given the default value. For the rest two, I have not given. That means to call this particular function, either you need to call this particular function with by passing all three, or you can call this particular function by passing at least two values. Okay, why at least two values are required? Because of these two positional arguments. Okay, for these two you have not given any default values, so it will not execute, this particular sum function will not be executed until and unless we are passing required number of arguments, right? So understanding of this default arguments and is very important. So whenever I execute this by passing only one value, it will generate the error saying that you need to pass the one required positional argument, that is B. Fine. It will execute this, no need to explain. Okay. Now I said while defining the default arguments, we need to define the arguments from the right hand side to left hand side. Okay, that is must. If I try to assign A as default argument and keeping B and C as it is, that means I want to treat B and C as positional arguments, whereas the first argument as the default argument. But when I execute this, it will generate the error, syntax error will be generated saying that non-default arguments follows the default argument. Okay, so this is not, so here it will generate the error. So to rectify this, what I need to do is I have only two choices. Either you do this, make all the arguments as default arguments, okay, or else keep from the right side. Try assigning default arguments from the right side to the leftmost side. Fine. So when I try to call some function, fine, and this time if I pass only one value, suppose this, it should give the correct answer, right? It should give the correct answer. Why it is giving the correct answer? Because A is assigned with value 2, B is assigned with value 1, and C is assigned with value 2, right? And suppose what should be the output of this time? Participants, you may send in a chat box. What should be the output of some function? Error. Why it should generate the error? A is missing, right? Yes, it should generate the error because A is missing, value of A. You need to at least you need to, if I want to call this particular function, if I want to execute this particular function, at least one parameter value you need to pass, right? Now it will generate the output. Fine. So we will continue in the next session. We will continue with the keyword arguments. Here we will stop. Okay. Any doubts in today's session, you may ask. Any doubts, queries related with today's session? Okay. Maybe Friday again you will have the assignments, practical session. So in that we will. Okay, fine. Sakshi, you might have
Yes.
finished the assignment, so better you share it from your end.
Okay, ma'am, I'll share it with you.
Okay.
Any doubts regarding the lecture, anyone? And I don't think there are doubts. We can end the session then.
Okay, fine. Thank you.
So see in the chat window, everyone. I have pasted the attendance link for today. So copy that link and complete your attendance on time. I'll paste that again.